In Module 3, Lesson 11, we're going to be subtracting fractions, making like units numerically. In question 1, we have 1/2 minus 1/5. Well, one of the ways a lot of y'all are liking to do it are multiplying 2 times 5, and I'm going to put it over here, 2 times 5, which gives us our common denominators. And over here, we're taking 1 times 5. And then we've got 1 times 2. Then we're making sure we put our operator in there, which is our minus sign. And as you can see, as long as you had your happy face, that means you did all the steps correctly. Now when we rewrite this, 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 5 is 10, minus 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 5 is 10. So 5 minus 2 is 3/10. So we end up with 3/10. Now, what you basically did on this first one, I'm going to show you on the second one how it actually worked numerically. See, we knew we were looking for, like in B, we have 7/8, and we're trying to find a common denominator between 3 and 8. Well, we know that if I multiply 3 by 8, I'm going to get 24. And if I multiply 8 by 3, I'm going to get 24. So that's going to give me a common denominator. So basically, I'm going to start off by taking 7/8, and I'm going to multiply the 8 times the 3. But if I end up multiplying 8 by the 3, I've got to multiply 7 by the 3. So now I end up with 21/24. For 1/3, I know I'm going to multiply that by 8 in order to get 24, because that's our common denominator. We have to multiply the top by it, so we end up with 24, and 1 times 8 is 8. So now when we rewrite it, we have 21/24 minus 8/24. And we know 21 minus 8 is going to be 13/24. Okay, on C, let's go ahead and do our first method that you did before. Let's go ahead and make our smiler face. And we're going to make 2 equivalent fractions that we're going to be subtracting. We know 5 times 10 is 50, so both denominators are going to be 50. And we're going to take 7 times 5, which was 35. And we end up with 3 times 10, which is 30. And we're going to make sure we put that operator in there. And we're going to end up with 5/50. Now this is not in simplest form because I can see they both have a factor of 5. So the way I like to do it is 5 times 1, go and decompose them, and now I got 5 times 10, and when I take out my common multiples, I can see the simplest form is 1/10. Now we had to reduce on this one, and that's because we found a common denominator just by multiplying the 2 denominators. Let's take a t-chart, for instance, and I pick 5 and 10. When I start skip counting by 5, I can see the very first multiple I come to is 10. And that is our least common multiple right there. So now I have 7/10 minus 3/5. And I want to turn this fifths to tenths. So if I take 3/5, I'm going to multiply that by a fraction in order to get something in tenths. I can see I need to multiply that by 2. And that's going to end up being 6/10. So now I have 7/10 minus 6/10, and that equals 1/10. You notice it's already in simplest form. That's because I went ahead and used this t-chart right here in order to find the least common multiple instead of just multiplying my denominators. Both are acceptable. Just realize that if you just use the happy face method up here, you are going to end up more than likely having to reduce. Now, let's go to D. Now, anytime we've had something like this, what I've told you to do is to decompose it. And that's 1 plus 5/6 minus 2/3. And what this allows us to do, there's a couple different methods I can do here. First one is, I could go ahead and subtract 2/3 from 5/6. In order to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses down here and say I'm going to subtract this first. So now I got 1 plus and 5 6 minus, I want to change 2/3 to 6. And I can see, in order to change that 6, I need to multiply top and bottom by 2. That'd give me 4/6. Now when I rewrite, I can see I have 1 plus 1/6. So the answer is actually 1 and 1/6. Now that's one method in order to do it. And the next one, I'm going to show you another method that we're going to be using. Okay. Now let's say I have 2 1/4 minus 1 1/5. So let's go ahead and decompose this. 2 plus 1 1/4 minus, and I'm not going to decompose a 1 1/5 because I'm going to change this around. We know the associative property says I can change the order of these additions. So I'm going to change around where I got 1/4 plus 2 minus 1 1/5. Now, how about if I subtract this first? I got 2 minus 1 1/5, and I know from the exercise we do is 2 minus 1 1/5 is going to give me 4/5. So I've simplified this mixed number problem. Now I have my common unlike fractions to add together. So we can see on this one, if I did a t-chart, we're going to come up with the same on this one. But let's get in the habit of doing a t-chart. There's 4 and 5. I have 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. And I can tell that by this, since with 5, this is going to be 10, 15, 20. Our least common multiple is 20. The same thing we do if we had our happy face. So let's go ahead and do the happy face method here. So we know 4 times 5 is going to give us 20 for both of these because we multiplied them. Then I have 1 times 5, which is given us 5. I'm going to put that operator in there. And I have 4 times 4, which gives us 16, which is going to equal 21/20. So now I have, as you can see, I have 21/20. Well, we know 21/20 is actually equal to 20/20 plus 1/20, which is the same as saying 1 and 1/20. All right, for F, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to rewrite it as 5 plus 6/7 minus 3 2/3. And that's going to allow me to swap these around, where I'm going to say 6/7 plus 5, because I still get 5 6/7 minus 3 2/3. I'm going to do this one first, because now I end up with 6/7 plus, and I know 5 minus 3 2/3 is going to be 1 and 1/3. Now I can decompose this where I got 6/7 plus 1 plus 1/3, and I'm going to add my fractions first. Now I've got 6/7 plus 1/3 plus 1, and we're going to add these fractions here first. Now 3 and 7, let's see what our common denominator is. We got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. And it looks like we got 14, 21. There's our least common denominator. It's going to be 21. So we're going to be turning both these into 21. So let's go ahead and I'm going to just do our common denominator here, which we know is 7 times 3 is 21. Now we got 6 times 3, which is 18. And I have 1 times 7, which is 7, which equals 25/21, which equals 21 21s plus 4 21s. So now we know that's 1 and 4 21s. Now the common mistake here is that we still have this whole number right here we have to add back in, plus 1. So our answer is going to be 2 and 4 21st. Now the question is that 4 21st in simplest form? Well, let's see. Let's say, are they divisible by 2? Well, 4 is because it's even. 21 is not. How about 3? Well, 4 is not divisible by 3. 4 is divisible by 4, but 4 does not get into 21. and they're not divisible by 5, they're not divisible by 7. So 2 and 4/21 is our final answer. Okay, G, I'm going to rewrite this to 15 plus 7/8 minus 5 3/4, which is 7/8 plus 15 minus 5 3/4. I'm going to subtract from the whole number to make it easy. I'm going to have 7/8 plus, and I know this could be 9 1/4, because I know 15 minus 5 is 10. 10 minus 3/4 would be 9 1/4. So now I have to add 7/8 plus 1/4 plus 9. And I'm going to add these two first. And if I did my T-chart, I can tell that 8 is going to be my common denominator. And it's dead giveaway usually when if you can turn 1 into the other, I can turn 4 into 8. That's my least common denominator. So we have 7/8 plus, I know 1/4, I'm going to multiply by 2, so it's going to be 2/8, and that equals 9/8 plus 9. So now we have 9 9/8. Well, we know 9/8 is actually be 9 plus 8/8 plus 1/8. So our answer would end up being 10 1/8. On H, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this one right away to going 5/8 plus 15 minus 3 1/3. Notice I don't decompose that last subtrahend because I'm going to be subtracting that. So I'm going to take that away from 15, and I've got 5/8 plus, and 15 minus 3 is going to be 12. 12 minus 1/3 is going to be 11 2/3. So now I got 5/8 plus 2/3 plus 11. I'm going to add these two fractions. And 8 and 3, well, let's see. We got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. We just have 8, 16, 24. So 24 is going to be our least common denominator. So we know 8 times 3 is 24. Here we have 5 times 3, which gives me 15. 2 times 8 gives me 16, which that's going to give me 31 24 plus 11. Now, we know 31 24 is actually going to be 24 24 plus 7 24 plus 11, which is going to give us 12 7 24. Number 2, Sandy ate 1/6 of a candy bar. John ate 3/4 of it. How much of the candy bar did John eat? How much more candy bar did John eat than Sandy? Okay, so let's draw something first to make sure we understand what's going on here. Here's our candy bar. And this is one whole candy bar. And it says Sandy ate 1/6. And then it says that John ate 3/4. So this here would actually be what was left. Now let's go back up to the question. It says, how much more candy bar did John eat than Sandy? So this is not asking us what is left. It wants to know how much more did John eat. Well, in order to find that out, we know we have to take 3/4 and we're going to have to subtract 1/6 from it to see how much more he ate. Because if you looked at a drawing here, and I'm going to put this as, this here was 3/4. This here is 1/6, which Sandy ate. This part right here, because the 3/4 what John ate, which was 3/4, this remaining part right here would be what, well, actually, how much more John ate. So now, if we do our t-chart down here, we have room, we got 4 and we have 6. So we go 8, 12, and you know what? If I go 6, I know the next multiple is 12. So I have a common multiple of 12 here. So I'm going to convert both of these to 12s. So 3/4, if I want to convert that to 12ths, I know I'm going to have to multiply this one by 3. So I end up with 9/12. 1/6 times something equals 12s. And I know I'm going to multiply it by 2. So it's going to be 2/12. So now I have 9/12 minus 2/12. And I end up with 7/12. So John ate 7/12 more of the candy bar. Okay, it says we have 4.5 yards of cloth needed to make a woman's dress, 2 2/7 yards cloth to make a girl's dress. So we're going to go ahead and draw ourselves a tape diagram, and we're going to, on the top, we're going to put the 4.5 yards, and down here we're going to put 2 2/7 yards, because this here is the girl's dress, this is the woman's dress. And it's looking here for how much more material it took to make the woman's dress. So we can see what we need to do. We have 4.5 yards minus 2 2/7 yards. Now, in order to solve this, we're going to rewrite it to 1/2 plus 4 minus 2 2/7. So when I subtract this, I'm going to subtract it from the whole number to make it easier. I got 1/2 plus 4 minus 2 would be 2. 2 minus 2/7 would be 5/7. That makes actually 1 5/7. I'm sorry. 1 5/7. Now, when we want to add these two, I've got 1/2 plus 5/7 plus 1. And I can tell the common denominator for these two are going to be 14. So, because 7 times 2 is 14. We have 1 times 7 is 7. 5 times 2 is 10. So we're going to end up with 1 17/14, which equals 1 14/14 plus 3/14. So that's going to equal 2 3/14 more yards. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go ahead and put that in here, 2 3/14. Now, in order to double check this to make sure it's right, I should be able to add how much the girl's dress is and what the extra amount of material is to get the 4.5 yards. So let's try that. We have 2 2/7 plus 2 3/14. When I add the whole numbers, I'm going to get 4 plus 2/7 plus 3/14. I'm going to add the fractions, and I can tell I'm going to have a common denominator of 14, because 2 times 7 is 14, so 2 times 2 is 4. And my other one's already in 14ths. So now I can see I have 4 7/14, which 7 is 7 times 1, and 14 times 2 should be 7 times 2 for 14. Take out my common denominators, and we were reduced to 1/2. So we can see we have 4.5. So it checked, it matched the 4.5. Our last problem, number 4. Bill reads 1/5 of a book on Monday. He reads 2/3 of a book on Tuesday. If he finished reading a book on Wednesday, what fraction of the book did he read on Wednesday? Okay, so let's go ahead and draw our tape diagram. And we know this here, 1 is going to represent the whole book. And it says that he read 1/5 on Monday. And he read 2/3 on Tuesday. And we want to know how much he read on Wednesday. So I can see what went up from here. I'm going to end up taking 1, and I'm going to have to subtract the sum of 1/5 plus 2/3 to find out how much it is. Now I have 1 minus, and I'm going to add these up first, and so I'm going to have a common denominator. And I can do my t-chart. I can see 3 and 5, and that's going to be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So I already know that my common denominator is going to be 15. So I can go ahead and do my cross multiplication, make it easier. 3 times 5 is 15. It's going to be a common denominator. And I have 1 times 3 gives me 3. 2 times 5 gives me 10. And I have my addition in there. So now I have 1 minus, and this is the sum of these two, so it's going to be 13/15. So now I have 1 minus 13/15, which is going to give us 2/15. So my answer would be he read 2/15 of the book on Wednesday. Now, let's go ahead and check this. That way we can make sure it's correct. So I know that if I add all 3 Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays up, I should end up with 1 whole. So let's say I have 1/5 plus 2/3 plus 2/15. And I can see I want to be turning them into 15ths. So let's go ahead and just turn them all into 15ths. Well, I know 3 times 5 is 15, so 3 times 1 would be 3. 3 times 5 times 3 would be 15, so 5 times 2 is 10, and that one's already in the 15ths. So when I add them up, I got 3 plus 10 is 13 plus 2 is 15, and it checks because that's 1 whole. Number 5. Tank A has a capacity of 9.5 gallons. 6 1/3 gallons of the tank's water are poured out. How many gallons of water are left in the tank? Okay. Tape diagram to make sure we don't answer the wrong question here. Okay, so it says tank capacity is 9.5. So that's going to be my total. 9.5 gallons. It says 6 1/3 gallons were poured out. And what's how much was left? Okay, so this is what is left. So I can see in order to solve this, I'm going to end up with 9.5 gallons. And I know if I wrote that, it'd be 9.5 as 5/10 minus 6 1/3. Now I know 5/10 is actually also equal to 1/2. So I'm going to bring it down to make it simpler. So now I'm going to rewrite this where 9 plus 1/2 minus 6 1/3. Now change it around to make it easier. It's 1/2 minus 9, plus 9 minus 6 1/3. So I'm going to subtract 9 from 6 1/3. I'm going to end up with 2 2/3. So now I've got 1/2 plus 2 2/3. So now I got 1/2 plus 2/3 plus 2. Now, I can tell my common denominator is going to be 6 on these because it's such a low number. So let's go ahead and put the 6's in. Now we've got 1 times 3 gives us 3. 2 times 2 gives us 4. So now I'm going to have, when I add them up, I've got 2 and 7, 6, which equals 2 and 6, 6, plus 1, 6, which equals 3 and 1, 6. So I know there'll be 3 and 1, 6 left. 3 and 1, 6 gallons were left. Now let's go ahead and check it, because I know if I take 6 and 1/3 plus 3 and 1/6, that should equal 9.5 gallons. So when I add these up, I know I got 9 plus 1/3 plus 1/6. I can rewrite these fractions. I can see its common denominator is going to be 6. So I'm going to leave this one as 1, 6. And 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. So now I'm going to end up with 9 and 3, 6. Well, we had 9.5. But 9 and 3, 6. If I take 3 times 1 over 3 times 2, take out the common denominators, it simplifies to 9 and 1/2. It checks.